Folk punk is one of the most emotionally charged and grassroots-driven genres in the modern music landscape. Combining the storytelling traditions and acoustic instrumentation of folk music with the DIY ethos, energy, and rebellion of punk rock, folk punk doesn't just bridge two genres, it creates a culture all its own. It's music for the misfits, the wanderers, the radicals, and the poets. At once intimate and explosive, raw and romantic, folk punk speaks to those disillusioned with both mainstream society and polished music production. Folk punk emerged in the late 1970s and early 1980s as punks began to strip back their sound and explore more acoustic and lyrically driven territory. Inspired by folk icons like Woody Guthrie, Bob Dylan, and Phil Ochs, folk punks saw the protest songs of the past as spiritual precursors to the political angst of punk. Where punk roared with distortion, folk punk simmered with acoustic guitars, banjos, accordions, and raspy voices cracking with urgency. It didn't matter whether the instrument was plugged in, as long as the message was loud. One of the earliest and most influential folk punk bands was the Pogues, led by the notorious Shane MacGowan. Formed in London in the early 1980s, the Pogues fused Irish folk instrumentation with punk attitude and energy. Songs like Streams of Whiskey and If I Should Fall from Grace with God are chaotic, celebratory, and often heartbreaking, full of immigrant stories, drunken regrets, and defiant pride. Their impact on the genre is immeasurable. In the United States, Violent Femmes brought folk punk to the forefront with their self-titled debut in 1983. Tracks like Blister in the Sun and Add It Up blended acoustic guitar, angst-ridden vocals, and deeply personal lyrics. Their stripped-down sound and punk honesty set a template that countless bands would follow. Moving into the 1990s and 2000s, folk punk gained traction among underground communities, anarchist collectives, and anti-folk scenes. Against Me, fronted by Laura Jane Grace, started as a solo acoustic punk act before becoming a full-fledged band. Their early EPs and albums like Reinventing Axl Rose are raw, politically charged, and fiercely independent, perfectly embodying the folk punk spirit. Another major force in folk punk is Defiance, Ohio, known for using traditional instruments like violin and banjo while delivering passionate lyrics about community, resistance, and self-doubt. Songs like I'm Just Gonna Leave and Oh Susquehanna resonated with a generation of punks searching for purpose beyond capitalism and conformity. AJJ, formerly Andrew Jackson Jihad, brought dark humor, existential dread, and quirky storytelling into the fold. Their acoustic-based songs like Brave as a Noun and People to the Reckoning mix self-deprecating introspection with sharp political commentary. They became heroes of the DIY scene with their accessible shows and genre-defying sound. Folk punk thrives outside traditional music industry systems. Many artists perform in living rooms, squats, basements, and street corners. It's a genre defined by accessibility. You don't need a label, a studio, or fancy gear. You need a voice, a message, and something to say. That ethos has birthed a subculture that often overlaps with anarchism, environmentalism, and queer liberation. Modern folk punk also includes collectives like Wingnut Dishwashers Union, fronted by the late Pat the Bunny. Pat's deeply personal lyrics explored addiction, trauma, and political disillusionment with raw vulnerability. Whether in Wingnut, Ramshackle Glory, or Johnny Hobo and the Freight Trains, Pat the Bunny became a symbol of the genre's bleeding heart and broken hope. While folk punk rarely charts or hits mainstream radio, its influence is everywhere, from buskers with political signs to punk festivals with unplugged sets. It inspired offshoots like riot folk, crust folk, and even Celtic punk, as seen in bands like Flogging Molly and Dropkick Murphys, who blend traditional Irish sounds with punk ferocity. Folk punk is not about perfection, it's about connection. It's music played on warped guitars with frayed strings, screamed with cracked voices from stages made of milk crates. It's about protest, survival, community, and catharsis. It's music that tells you it's okay to be angry, scared, uncertain, and still sing through it. As long as there are stories to tell and injustices to fight, folk punk will live on. It may never top the charts, but it will always resonate in alleyways, coffee shops, and rebellious hearts. An acoustic war cry in a world desperate for authenticity.